Okay, let us begin together the second chapter of Rambam Hilchos Mikvaot's fascinating halachas. Yesterday we kind of gave an overview, and we left speaking about chatzitza. What is considered a separation? What is considered to intervene, to block you, so that that you shouldn't be completely submerged in the mikvah. And he's gonna remember we said yesterday is the substance something you don't care to have on you, or does it bother you if it's on you? How much of your body is it on? So a lot of practical question comes up. What about honey? What about someone has sap? They really don't want the sap on them. What about Band-Aids? What about if someone has a scab? What about jewelry? All these different things are going to be addressed in a lot of these things are going to be addressed in today's class. Fascinating halachas. Halacha Aleph, let us begin as we discuss different substances in halacha Aleph and Beis about if it's considered a chatzitza, if it's considered a substance that intervenes or not. These are things that are considered to intervene.
No, Mike.
These are substances that's considered to intervene in a person. Lifluf shechutz la'ain, the secretion that is on the outside of the eye. So when the mucus comes on the outside of the eye, we're going to learn soon that on the inside of the eye it's not such a problem, but if it's on the outside of the eye and it's there, it's on you. The person obviously doesn't want it there, and therefore it's considered a chatzitza. It's considered to intervene. The gelet shechutz l'machra, and the same thing is with the fluid outside a wound. So someone has a wound and there's fluid outside the wound. Vadam yavesh al gabi hamakar, when you have dried blood after you had like a bruise, you have dried blood on you. Veratia sha'alaha. And when that blood crusts on top of the wound, when there is like filth that crusts over, and the filth kind of crusts on the person. Obviously, he doesn't want it. The rubatzek, saying it's with dough, a tit, or with mud. That's under your nails when you have mud or things. So someone goes into the mikvah with mud or dirt, right? A lot of times you didn't clean your nails. That's why the women, when they go to the mikvah, they're so careful to clean their nails. And also it's a thick kind of mud that's on the body, titayoven or potter's clay, or actually thick mud is the first one, then potter's clay, and then the tichal drachim, or the mud you get when you walk on the way. When it's rainy outside. In the olden days, it didn't have streets or sidewalks like we have today, very muddy. Aninta sham tamid, that is always the constant there, not just afilu b'meisachama, even in the summer months. So he's going to say mud in the winter months is softer, is more of a liquid than the thick mud that's there even in the summer months. All these things create the substance that intervenes, that does not allow the mikvah to come off. Why? He's going to say interesting. But other kinds of mud that are kind of more liquidy that come off easily in the water, kshulach, when it is like more of a liquid. And in chaytzitz, that you don't have to worry if it's a lighter liquidy mud. Sharei nimcha b'mayim kshuyavish shenimcha b'mayim, because in the water it's like when you take a bath, the mud will come off, so you don't have to worry about the dirt that's going to come off. So the specific kinds of dough and mud and all the substances are the heavier ones that will stick to your body when you go in. But if it's going to come off, obviously you don't have to worry about it. However, when it's dry, it does create it. It does intervene. The substance does intervene. Therefore, it's no good. So again, he's very specific, going through the list of what is kind of more will stick to you, what's harder, what's crust more like, than just a liquidy thing. Obviously, if you go into the mikvah, it's just going to come. And now he goes to the same thing with halacha beis, with different substances that stick to you, that you don't want on you, and they also stick to you. Hadvash, honey, right? Honey is very sticky. Hadyoy, or ink. Someone got ink on themselves. Hachalav, or milk. Hadam, and blood. Usraf hatut, or the sap of berries, of berry bushes. So they're like I guess maybe like stickier kind of sap. Bahate'ena, and figs. Bahashikma, or a wild fig tree, the hacharov, or carob trees, yevation on those options, the above mentioned, these different kind of saps and fig trees and different kind of liquids, honey, if they're more dry, it's chaytzitzin and they're dried on the body, then they're going to make a substance that's going to block the person from the mikvah. But lachen, if they above things in halacha base are more liquidy, ain't a chaytzitzin, then they don't create a chatzitza, they don't create a disturbance, intervening substance, and therefore they're okay. If they're more liquid, they'll come off. Sharkal srafin, other kinds of sap, in lachem and yavation, chaytzitzin, they all are, I guess, like sap. It's very sticky, and they are going to make a chatzitza. They're going to make a separation. So certain items, honey, it depends if it's dry or liquid. If it's liquid, it'll come off when you go in the mikvah. But other things, all the other kinds of saps from the other trees, they're harder and they're harder to get off, and therefore that's for sure going to be considered a blockage, a disturbance to the mikvah. What about blood that sticks to the flesh? So someone has like a sticky kind of blood, even if it's liquidy, it's a chaytzit, it's not going to come off in the water. It's more like a dye, maybe it's more permanent attached to the body, and therefore it is those material, those items, those liquids, substances are considered chatzitzas. That blood is going to stick, and therefore it's chatzitza. Now, you asked an interesting question. Just finished with the interesting law. What happens if somehow someone has a limb that's hanging on somehow, whatever, some weird way? Does the substance matter on that limb? In other words, it's not a limb I use. Somehow somebody had a limb that's like an extra limb that's hanging on, that's hanging off, it's not fully attached to the person. If that limb has a substance on it that would disqualify the main part of the body, the fact that substance is on that limb that's hanging off, is that considered a chatzitza for the whole body, an intervening substance? And the answer is yes. It's still, I guess, since it's attached to the person, it's still part of their body, even though it's hanging on. It will make the whole body disqualified from the mikvah and will be a chatzitza. Now, going back to Beisa starting, we spoke about a similar idea, but basically in the woman's private part. So it could get sweaty and it could collect dust over there, it could become sticky. Like, what about that? Is that area considered something that makes a chatzitza to the woman? So she have to make sure to clean that area well, because everything has to be cleaned out. Beisa starting, the hidden parts for each of the woman. Chaytzetz is considered a chatzitza, the liquids that come out over there. It's a chatzitza. She has to first wash that area of her body first. Because it sweats there constantly. And then dust comes in that area, and it makes a chatzitza, it makes a separation, it's considered to intervene. But he says something very interesting. When do we say that? Remember, because it was a rule, the woman has to not want it there. Be very careful to say, I don't like the substance there. With a married woman, because she knows that she has relations with her husband, and she's more concerned that it should be cleaned out, and she doesn't want any sweat or any dust over there. But a girl who is not married, she's not as particular about there because she's not married, and therefore it's actually not considered a chatzitza. So there's a difference, interesting, between a married woman and a single girl about their private area. Very interesting halacha. Halacha dalet. What about jewelry, right? What about different jewelry they wear? Ha'eged. Ha'eged is a bandage first. Someone has a bandage. Shagabi amakal, it's on a wound. They have a wound, they have a bandage. We had similar laws with my kids, washing egelvasser. My son broke his finger, and he had a thing on top of it. Does he have to take it off, or could he leave it on? V'hasak kasim. Shagabi hashever, or somebody who has a metal plates on a broken bone, right? So like we put on a kind of a metal plates that they would put against the olden days. Shalgabi hashever, that's on a broken bone. V'hashirim, v'hanizamim, and then the different kinds of jewelries. What about necklaces, nizamim, or nose rings, v'hakatloyos, and a choker necklace, but I think it's a little bit of a looser one. V'hatabois, and rings. Is manchin chazakim. If they're tight, udvukim babasar, the kind of jewelry or the kind of, for the broken bone, it's tight to the body, then it's a chatzitza when you go into the mikvah with that. If they're loose, and then they're not chatzitza. So I guess it could be a real issue. Think about if a woman has to go to the mikvah today, and she has a broken bone, she has something on, will it be a chatzitza or not? Maybe they have to deal with that, depending on kind of the item that it is. Now he goes on to talk about headbands. What about headbands? The women wear chuti tzemer, strands of wool, chuti pishtan, and strands of flax, the haritzuos, or different kinds of straps, that the women tie it to their heads. So different kinds of headbands that they tie to their heads. L'noi for beauty. Chaytzitzin, those headbands are chatzitza, are considered a separation. They're intervened. Because they're tight. The way they're tied, they don't allow the water to completely have the body submerge at one time in the water because they're stopping the water from getting there. However, strands of hair, I guess if you tied some kind of tying with hair, some kind of headband perhaps, in the hair will not create a substance. Why? Not because they're not too tight. The water will get through the hair. It'll soak up the water around it and on the body. Enough, and even if they're not loose, the water will get through, and therefore the hair will not be considered a chatzitza, will not be considered a separation of it to intervene between it and the water. What about tight chokers? Okay, and he says something interesting. You'll see in the olden days. I know today people are very into looking very, very thin. In the olden days, I think actually the way it was explained to me is that people would want to look like they ate a lot because it would show you're rich. People didn't have a lot of food. And in a way, looking fatter was actually, believe it or not, was something that could show that you're a wealthier person. So they would put on their chokers in a way to look like their body's bulging so that they could look heavier. Interesting. Chutun shabatzaver, strings that are in the neck. Usually the strands around the neck are not chaytzit. Even if it's made out of flax. Why? Because women will not choke themselves. If you have a thing around the neck, we just spoke about a headband, these things around the neck, you're not going to make it so tight that you're going to choke, so the water should be able to get through. But the choker necklaces, but these choker kind of necklaces, these are called tight necklaces and choker necklaces and necklets, they will make a chatzitza, a separation. Because women will choke herself in them. Why? As I explained, they should take her about muscle, so she should look with a lot of flesh. She wants those things bulging, so she looks like she has a lot of flesh. So those things are so tight that we say that it's a chatzitza. It causes that her body shouldn't be full submerged in the water if she's wearing this. What about here? Just in general here. Seir shal halev. Here, that's on your heart, that's on your chest. Shenis kasher, it became hard, right? It hardened, you sweated, and the hair got kind of together, stuck together. Vanasa kilkuli, and it became tangled and matted. Sometimes in people's beards, if you don't shower and brush your beard, the beard can also become very matted and thick together. I guess, some Rastafarian, I don't know what it's called exactly, people have their hair. Sometimes it can get very thick. Here he's talking about the beard. And the Rambam chaytzitzin, if the hair on the chest and the hair on the beard, you allow it to mat, will be considered an intervening substance because the hair is not, the water, in that way, it doesn't want the water to get through over there. Therefore, it's going to be good. Very interesting question on halacha 8. What happens if you swallowed something that's tummy? Very interesting rule. So now it's inside you. And the Rambam tells you the halacha is that as long as it's inside you, and you kind of went to the mikvah, and the tummy thing is still inside you. Like sometimes people have a wound with a bullet, they don't take it out. But what happens if that bullet was tummy? Now it's in you. You went to the mikvah, now you come out, it's still inside you. So the Rambam tells us that as long as it's in your body, it doesn't make you tummy. It has to be outside your body. Let's see. There was an arrow that was stuck to a person. Unfortunately, this guy got an arrow in him. As long as you see that arrow sticking out of the person's body, it wasn't pulled out yet for whatever reason. He goes to the mikvah. Sorry, it's a chatzitza. That arrow is considered a chatzitza. But if the arrow is inside his body, you can't see it. I'm sorry, he could go to the mikvah and he could eat betrumas out of at night. Tummy, even if the arrow itself was tummy, you got an arrow in you, you have a tummy dick arrow that's inside you, you went to the mikvah, it's okay. As the Rambam is going to say, because as long as it's inside you, it's fine. Or someone swallowed a tummy ring. He went to the mikvah, and the ring's inside of him, he's pure. But if he spits up that ring, he throws it up, it has to come out. After he went to the mikvah, nitma, he becomes tummy. How come? By touch, as the ring comes out, his mouth is going to touch it as it comes out of him. Because we explained before, Ram said it was already established before that anything that the body swallows, when he's alive, when the body's alive, they can't make tummy, then become tummy. It's inside you, it's hidden, you're not worried about it. So therefore, only when it goes out, since at that point it's going to touch your lips, I guess it's going to go out of you, you're going to touch the tummy ring, then you'll become tummy. But as long as it's inside you, you don't have to worry about being tummy. What happened if the guy has like feet hidden, the skin is going over in his feet, and he has splinters inside you, or rocks, and he goes into the mikveh, and I guess maybe he's a very heavy person or a lot of skin that's going over those rocks and those things are in there. He is not pure because the water has to get to everywhere, even though halachically maybe he wouldn't have to lift the flaps that are covering over the water didn't get to, but the water has to be able to get there, and therefore if there's anything in those flaps, dust or whatever, pebbles or different things there, the halacha would be that he's taught that the mikveh doesn't count. He's polonis melugma. What about bandages? Okay, different kind of bandages that a person wears. Melugma, like a compressing thing that a person works. Uritia shal beisas darim, or a dressing over hidden parts of the body. These different dressings that people wear, I guess, are tight on the body, and they cause a separation. Even though under the flaps of the body, we're saying the water doesn't have to actually reach there. The water has to be able to get there. If the flap would be lifted up, if you would stretch his body in a way that the flap wouldn't be there, the water could get there. Right now, it's no good. Now he talks about knotted hairs. How can water get through? What about if some of the hairs are knotted? He's going to talk about here that he had one or two hairs, that there was a wound and somebody had a wound, and there were one or two hairs out of the wound. The roisha and the top of those hairs, mudbak lamaka, got stuck. Every see you have sometimes a scab, and the hairs, the top of hairs next to the scab, get stuck in the scab. Or he had two hairs that were attached to some kind of dirt, mud, or some other kind of dirt. Or something interesting. He had two eyelashes that were threaded through hairs from one lower's eyelashes that were threaded through them. Somehow the two eyelashes are connected. These are considered a chatzitza because you don't want them there, and the hairs are stuck to a scab or to mud or something, and therefore that would make it considered a chatzitza to the body because you don't want it over there. In general, a person should make sure to clean his feet first, that he has no dust on them before he goes into the mikvah. Now, if you do go into the mikvah, as will normally happen, the dust will come off, disintegrate in the mikvah, and you will be fine. So you want to really make sure your feet are clean before you go in. But if you didn't make sure that your feet are clean, you are fine. Halacha Yud Aleph. Somebody, when you go to put kalim in the mikvah, we know in the local mikvah shalom, put it in the basket, and then the water, you put the vessels in the basket, and the water will completely submerge it. So you shouldn't be holding it in your hand when you're doing it because the vessel won't be completely submerged in the water. Here's telling you the guy did it. Someone held it bilan harei and betumasan. Then they're still tummy because you held them when the vessels were in the mikvah. What happens if you kind of hold it loosely and allow the water to go in? You shouldn't do that because what if you don't hold it loosely? If you allow you to kind of hold something loosely, you might hold it too hard, and then the vessels won't really be considered to become pure from the impurity on them. Also, however, if you first stuck your hands in the water, made your hands wet, then you held on to the vessels, since your hands already had the water beforehand, I guess that water is already going to be considered connected to the water, the new water you put in, and then the toiveling those dishes for tuma, at least in times of Beis Hamikdash, it would be okay if your hands are wet beforehand. Halacha 12. Okay, where are we holding here? We're going to talk about now laws of a mother holding her son. What about if a mother holds her son in the mikveh when she goes in? The mother puts the son on her back. Maybe he's like laying on her back. She went to the mikveh. Tefillah doesn't count. I guess maybe she only checked herself. She didn't check her child, and the mud is touched to her child, and maybe it's going to become attached to her. And it made a chatzitza. So that, in other words, you took your kid in dirty into the. I guess the kid is not so much the issue. Maybe the kid would have floated, or the kid wouldn't be stuck to his mother when his mother went into the mikvah. But we're worried that the kid's dirty. Now, when you come out of the mikvah, you see there's no dirt on the kid or you. But maybe when you were in the mikvah, that dirt was on you, even though when you fell off, it wasn't there anymore. Therefore, it's a chatzitza. Maybe you have to make sure your kid is clean before you go in. Also, not just yourself. regarding the laws of a nida. Halacha 13, what happens if she has something in her mouth? And I mentioned this the other day when we were learning, didn't know that Amma was going to bring it today, but if she didn't clean her teeth well or something like that, or she held her hair in her mouth when she went to the mikveh, is that a problem? Nida shenasna sara b'fiyah, a woman who's a nida, who had her period, or she's with her husband, she has to purify herself. And she has her hair in her mouth. Then also in times of Beis Hamikdash, she also couldn't eat, the truma, couldn't touch certain things. Oisha kafza yada, oisha kartza b'sif seiseha, or she clenched her hand like tight. She went to the mikveh holding her, making a fist. Oisha kartza b'sif seiseha, or she pursed her lips. She made tight lips when she went in. So I guess you have to make sure your lips are not tight. But she had a bone between her teeth. It's as if she didn't go to mikvah. As I said yesterday, even though the water is not actually going in her mouth, she can't purse her lips, she can't squeeze her hands. She has to make sure to leave everything that the water could get around. And even though the water is not going to go in her mouth anyway, it has to have the ability, if the water went in, it would go everywhere. And since she has stuff stuck in between her teeth, the mikvah is no good. And so too, all the other things that are tamei, it doesn't remove the impurity from you. If you go to the mikveh with stuff in between your teeth, your fist can't be tight, and lips can't be personal. What happens if she put money in her mouth? She had a coin, maybe she wanted to hide it, maybe she wanted to pay the guy later, whatever. Yard of tavla, she went down into the mikveh, did the tefillah, did the submersion in the water. Now she removed the impurity of nida from her. She's not a nida anymore because she went to the mikveh. Remember, the money's in her mouth, and I guess maybe something that's inside you. Now there was nothing stuck in between her teeth, so perhaps the coin is sitting in her mouth. So it's not. If the water would have gone into the mouth, it would have gone everywhere. So it made her not need anymore. But but the problem is, she had spit in her mouth that was sitting on that coin. Now that coin was tamei. So what happens is, she cleaned her body from impurity, but her spit is on a coin. Now that coin is tamei, and the spit on that coin is tamei. And then when she comes out of the mikvah, that spit touches her, and that's on the coin. That spit didn't count as she went to the mikvah and purified her because that spit was sitting on the coin. It kind of wasn't considered to be inside her, and therefore she becomes nida again from her spit. That's why you want to make sure to have nothing in your mouth at that time. Okay, we started late today. I'm sorry, guys. So we'll go. Is it okay with everyone if we go a little longer, and we'll start the Chumash Tanya class in a little bit. Halacha 14. A list of things that do not make chitzitza. A lot of things we told you will make a separation. Here's a list of the opposite way where it doesn't consider it a separation. These are things that do not make separate substances that not to intervene in the person. They don't make a separation. Kilkale haroish are matted here on the heads. Oh, remember I said before, matted here on the beard or the chest, that's a problem. But if it's here and the head is matted, that's not a chatzitza. It's not considered a separation. Maybe it's a style or whatever. Ubeis hashechi, I guess the hair that's in the armpit, it got a little matted. Ubeis hastarim sheriish, or in the privates of a man, not like the privates of a woman, which are more concerned. The man knows it's there and therefore is not as concerned. Maybe it doesn't make a separation. The little of shaba'ayin, or when you have a scab, this secretion that comes out not on top of the eye like before, but it's actually in the eye. The galat chelsa hamaka, or there's a scab above the wound. Or there is filth, shal b'sari that's on his flesh, or a certain kind of dirt that's under the nail, or a hanging nail, or the skin, or a thin hair that's on the skin of a child. It's like a thinner kind of hair. It's in these kinds of muds, these kinds of scabs, these kinds of where they are in the eye in those locations. They do not consider it a separation. Now he goes on to what happens if hairs are tied to each other. Exactly, there's knotting in the hair and so on, because the women, before they go to the mikveh, by the way, even today in the regular laws of Nida, they make sure the hair is combed well. Let's say, sorry, so yes, and there were two hairs knotted together, two hairs knotted to each other. Is like one. If it's one knot, two hairs, got one knot in between the two hairs, the knot is not so tight, the water goes in between that knot between the two hairs. But Sarah Achas, if you made a knot out of one hair, you took two ends of the hair and made it a knot. Those knots are much tighter. If you ever tried to get at a shoelace that's knotted, one shoelace is a knot in the middle, it's much harder. That is a chatzitza. The knot is too tight. But again, as we learned in the Rambam yesterday, it's only as long as it bothers the woman. She doesn't care if there's one knot in the thing, then it's not an issue. But if she's not worried about it, she doesn't care about this not in the here. Also, so the tefillah will count unless, because remember we said as long as it's in the minority of the body, and also and she doesn't care about it, then we're not concerned, because from the Torah it could even be the majority of the body, or it could be that she doesn't care about it. But from the Chachamim, as long as it has both, she doesn't care about it and it's not the majority of the body, it's fine. So the Rambam here says the majority of the hair in the head. So as long as there's not knots in the majority of the hair of the head, and she doesn't care about it, as long as it's the minority part of the hair of the head, it's not a problem. The Yarali, it seems to me. So that the Rambam brought from the Gaonim, very interesting. So the Rambam is going to argue with this rationale here. The Gaonim who lived centuries before the Rambam said that as long as the minority part of the hair on the head is not knotted and she doesn't care about it, it's fine. But the Rambam is going to say, why are you saying the minority part of the hair in the head? Why don't you say the minority of the overall body? You don't have to have the 49% of the hair. You have to have 49%. The Rambam is going to actually very interesting. You don't often get to see this, where the Rambam actually argues with the opinion, with another opinion that was established before him, not too long before him, but before him. See what the Rambam said. The Rambam says, it appears to me, your hair is the same as your body. Regarding going to the mikveh, you don't count the hair on its own. That we say the majority of the hair. The Rambam is going to say, even if the majority of the hair in your head does have knots in it, in any mak, but as long as you follow the rule that the person who has the knots doesn't care about it. Also, the mikvah counts for them. Unless, besides having a lot of knots in your hair, the majority of your head, you also have other separations going on in your body, intervening substance of the rest of your body, creating the majority of your whole body. And then together with the two substances that are intervening between your body and your hair, it's the majority of your body. Then it's no good. Like we explained earlier, and this will apply whether to the nida, the women who have their period, or any kinds of impurity. Rambam says, even if the majority of your hair has knots inside of it, because it's not the majority of your body, then Rambam says his opinion would be that we're not concerned that the mikveh is good mikveh for that person. Now he's going to talk about the combing of the hair, that a woman should comb the hair. In Ezra, right? Ezra, the famous Navi, brought the Yidden to Eretz Yisrael. He made up that women should always prepare before they go to the mikveh and they should comb their hair. Tikanas Ezra, halacha 16. Ezra made a takana, he ordained that a woman should comb her hair, prepare herself, and then right after the combing, go to the mikveh. Get the knots out. Make sure there's no mud or anything there, get the knots out. If, because not always the women have time, we deal with this on a regular basis, the kids are home, whatever. If she could at night, before she goes to the mikveh, at night, comb her hair, then right we go to the mikveh, take him the that's the best, because there's not too many knots there. What happens if she can't? She's at work or whatever, it's impossible. Or she's sick, there's kind of sickness. You could do the preparation, the combing before Shabbos. It's Shabbos, and she goes through a 24-hour period till after Shabbos, and that will be okay with it. Even though Ezra said you need to do a combing before you go to the mikvah, ideally the best is right before the mikvah. But if you can only do it a while before, that's okay. Tavav, so she went to the mikvah. What happens now if she went to the mikvah and then afterwards she found something bad? She came out and she finds there's something, she didn't know about it before, there's a separation, there's something on her, and she sees it at Tavav also. She went to the mikvah and she came out. She sees something that is this disturbance. But she knows she prepared. She did what Ezra said. She combed her hair. She prepared herself. She says, look, I found something. I didn't know about it before. Should I assume that maybe I didn't do a good job preparing? So now I need to go through the whole preparing process again. Or can she say, oh my gosh, let me just go right back into the mikvah? And the Rambam says she could go right back into the mikvah since she just did the combing. Right now, she finished preparing. And she goes right back to the mikvah. But if not, she has to go a second time. But if not, let's say she did the preparation, the combing a while before, she could go in. She has to do the whole preparation over again because obviously she didn't do a good job, or something happened in between when she did it, and then she has to go later on. For those that are joining us now, we're just running a few minutes late on the Rambam. Hopefully you'll forgive us and in about 5 minutes we'll start the Tanya class. Loi tochuf isha ben eser mipnei shemekatev esaseir. A woman should not comb her hair with a kind of utensil called a natron, because what it does is it causes the hair to snap. Instead of just straightening the hair, getting out the knots, causes the hair to snap, and then those snap pieces are going to be inside the hair. It's not attached to the body, and it creates a chatzitza to the body. It creates this separation, which is not good. You just want to comb it so that it's straight, not have extra pieces of hair hanging around. She also shouldn't use an oak sap, something that they would guess brush with, also because masach esaseir, because it snarls the hair. Instead of separating it, it's not a good kind of a brush to brush your hair, because it makes things together. And now it talks about what kind of water is the best for combing hair to get out knots. You never knew we would learn about this for the men in this class. You want to use warm water. Even if hot, warm water from the sun, because hot water straightens the hair. It hardens the hair and it enables it to be combed out. It's good. It hardens it and makes the hairs harder and gets you combed out. But cold water, it does the opposite. It tangles the hair and it causes it to contract, and it's not good for separating a chatzitza. So you definitely want to use warm, hot water in your preparation for the mikvah. I was going to talk about don't touch liquids that are sticky, like oily foods, right before you go to the mikvah. So the mother's running out, she's doing supper for her kid, and she starts ripping, as they do for the little kid's chicken. Her hands get oily. If she didn't clean her hands on the way to the mikvah won't count. Neither shenasna tafshel livna. The woman who's a nida, who's a nida impurity, gave her child food, the tavla, and went to the mikvah, but without cleaning her hands. Like, also, let's feel that the mikvah doesn't count because it's the fatty substance that on her hands, she never cleaned them in between. Sarta b'vsara. What happens if a woman scratched herself? It's yadam and blood came out with tavla and she went to the mikvah. So when did she get the scratch? Within 3 days, she had that wound, that scratch. Then that cut, that as it's healing up to 3 days, it's not considered a separation. But after 3 days, it starts to harden. It's considered a separation because the blood starts to congeal over there. Like a scab on a wound, and then I'm not sure what they do. The women have to actually, like this, the scabs, they kind of take them off in order that there shouldn't be a chatzitza. Same thing is with secretion in the eye. If it gets dried, and it's begun to change color, it's considered an intervening substance. As it hardens and dries, it's considered an intervening substance. Last two halachas. What about talking about now like makeup, like what's it called? This kind of, the ointment they put in their eye, mascara. It's the blue ointment that they put on in the eye, not a chatzitza, but if it's on top of the eye, then it's on top of the eye, it does make a chatzitza. The mascara they put on top of the eye, that is considered a chatzitza. But if she's flickering her eyes, then it's not a chatzitza even on top of the eye. Why not? Because the water will get in and get through it, and therefore it won't be chatzitza. Last halachet, last two, about the woman in the mikvah. If she stretches her eye opens her eye very strong in the water. Or she squeezes her eye very tight shut in the mikvah. Also, the mikvah doesn't count, again, because it's creating different kinds of folds in the eye that are not normally there, and the water won't get to where it's supposed to get. And therefore, the mikvah doesn't count. Medvan, we're in the entire. When did we say that we're worried about this whole eye squeezement? It's regarding the truma in the days of the Beis Hamikdash. But a regular nida, impurity of a woman to be back together with the husband, is in muteres. We're not considered about opening the eyes through eyes or squeezing them. Even if the case, the last few halachas where she gave the food to her child, as she's walking out to the mikvah, she ripped up food with her hand for her child. Or she has a wound that was 3 days old. Or she had in her eyes this mascara on top of the eye, or she squeezed her eyes open very tight, squeeze her eyes closed. She's still permitted regarding the laws of nida to be with her husband. That's fine. Because all these laws and similar laws, they're all rabbinic. Now the rabbis, I guess we didn't see that the water didn't work. The rabbis were more strict. When you entire is gazur, then you be a like gazur. So The rabbis made their decree not across the board that mikveh doesn't work for anything in this scenario. The rabbis were specific in their decree that they made. It's regarding the truma, the eating of the holy foods, but they didn't make the decrees regarding women being together with their husband. Anything that the rabbis consider to be a separation for a nida woman to be with her husband, for impure to pure foods, so too for other kind of purities, and those rules would apply for a convert too. So whatever we're worried about the woman regarding eating pure foods, so too it's with all other kinds of impurities, not just nida, with the same. In other words, whatever the rabbis made a decree for a woman who had her period, but not regarding the husband, regarding eating pure foods, that would apply to all other kinds of impurities. And whatever would apply also general to the Jewish woman, that's exactly the kind of restrictions we have for a convert converting, to making sure that they're fully submerged in the water. Someone went to the mikvah and they found afterwards that, there was something on my body that didn't allow the water to go. We were and they see on them something that they worked with all day. The thing that created that separation, they were dealing with it all day. So he's going to explain you a rule here. The person says, look, I'm telling you, I know for a fact that this was not on me. I looked at that part of my body and I know that was not on me before I went to the mikvah. So now, as long as you can't say that for sure, for a fact, I know for sure it wasn't on me, the problem is, and I'm going to teach you the rule of Kazakh. It's just in general good to know for Jewish law and understanding Gemara and so on. Everything is established as its previous, what it was, until proven otherwise. Like you're innocent till proven guilty. So you believe you're a good person until you prove otherwise. I guess that's the logic over there. If you were a nida, you're now for sure a nida. Your chazaka is you're established as that. To remove you from that, we need to know for sure. So if you come up from the mikvah and you were established that you are not pure, and we have a chatzitza, we don't know for sure that the mikvah removed it. You have to know for a fact. So if you can say, I know for a fact that when I went to the mikvah it wasn't on me, fine, then you're fine. But as long as you can't say that for a fact that I'm for sure pure, then you're always back to your original state. Because her original status was categorized as pure. She's just continuing to stand in her original impurity until we know for sure that she became pure. She's going to stand in her original impurity. That is the end, my friends, of